Hello, friends. Welcome back to another edition of the PCS podcast, the Pokemon podcast built by the community for the community. I am one of your hosts, Aaron, and with me tonight, I have my colleague and my co host, Michael, and we have a lot to cover in this episode.
Yes, we
We
do.
are live for the first time on video. So, any new listeners or watchers, as I should say, I'm a big fan of the It's Always Sunny podcast when they started to record it in video and they called them creeps and listeners. So, but the PCS podcast actually stands for the Pokemon Championship Series. But we've shortened it to just say PCS because it's a very short and sweet. So, for the first time, people that are watching us, thank you. Number one, Michael and I, or I should say, Michael's done a lot of work to getting this prep, so I will put all the praise to his back. But I'm super excited. But yeah, thank you for listening and watching the PCS podcast. Michael, how you been?
Not too bad, man. I think you kind of already alluded to it. The last week of my life has been learning OBS. I think if you follow me on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, you saw me making some posts. I have been pouring a ton of my typical YouTube time that I would typically put towards watching the TCG content, things like that, all towards OBS. It's not perfect, but we are here. I did a stream last Friday for the first time ever. I played in the Tournament of Doom. I ran Lugia. It went pretty well until I hit a Quad Thorns. It was a foreshadow of things to come for Quad Thorns. It handed it pretty easily to me. All the good stuff. But yeah, so got to stream that. Had to cut the stream a little early. I was going solo. My wife Caitlin was out of town picking up our son from Wilmington, North Carolina. So I had to cut the stream because the baby woke up. But I still played the tournament. I was sitting in the dark in his bedroom on my iPad and getting to try to play it that way too, which wasn't great. But I ended up finishing 5-3. I think I finished 25th out of like 150 something people. So still not a bad night. Any night with Lugia is always a good night and all that good stuff. I did play some more Poke 2. On Sunday, I played Darius for our weekly challenge. This was week 1 of our season 3 challenge of the PCS Patreon challenge for Shrouded Fable. And I got wrecked. I was playing Lugia again just because, again, I hadn't had a ton of time to test anything new. Last night, after Worlds happened, things like that, I was like, all right, cool, let's just send Lugia. And PTCG Live plus Lugia did its thing, and my hands were freaking awful, dude. Like, I sent some
Yeah.
screenshots to some of my buddies about it, and I'm just like, man, this is really, really bad. But yeah, so that was that. Lots of Pokemon. I thought about Pokemon a lot. Didn't get to play Pokemon, obviously. Gearing up to do what I'm doing here. Got my camera set up, which is I'm super stoked to finally get to use again after like it not doing anything for a year. But yeah, so here we are, really excited. And then the week's going to be pretty busy with work. And then I have a double cup, my first double cup weekend of the season. So yeah, pretty stoked for that. Still undecided what I want to play. Pretty confident though I'm not going to be playing Lugia, which is kind of sad because I've loved playing Lugia, but I think it's just time. I think it's time to move on for the time being. So we'll see what ends up being played. Been building some decks with my son Graham because he'll be, of course, playing as well for the juniors division. Yeah, gonna be pretty busy week. How about yourself, man? I know I talked a lot there, but what about you?
No worries. I also had quite of a busy week. I played Drew in our standard season challenge, and
Yeah,
he of course beat me with my favorite deck, Reggie Drago. So that hurt. He had banned my mill
yeah.
deck, a Great Tusk Mill. I am gonna get someone on that. If everyone bans that the whole time, I'm gonna call you all cowards for not letting me play it. But I had Miraidon or Ancient Box into either Zard or Reggie Drago, and I thought, you know what? If I play Miraidon and I, get off early, start off early and able to maybe knock out his only Reggie Drago V, it just basically kind of steamrolls from there because Ogre Pawns are only 210 HP. So I did win game 1, and then game 2 and 3 I just didn't have the exact starts I had. I cannot absolutely you that was our first kind of test with streaming on Twitch, so I do appreciate you spending time with Drew and I that night.
Yeah, no, it's
And
fun.
appreciate for Drew to getting everything going. I cannot complain about my generators. I hit
Dude,
doubles a lot. They were fully charged and sending it.
you
It's just
you were Jesse Parkering. That's what you were doing.
yeah, exactly. Kind of a foreshadow for things to come, but it was just hard because, like I said, I didn't always have the right response for his response, basically. So lost
Yeah.
game 2 and 3, but it was nevertheless it's always fun playing Drew because he is a remarkable player.
Yeah.
And then I quickly got in my GLC match. I do Mr. Jeff Beish that literally has a GLC podcast called Let Loose. He had internet troubles. He didn't have
Oh
internet for
no.
almost like a week and a half. But he was able. I think he got it restored like Thursday night, like right before he went into doing some streaming with Carpo Warriors Weeder, who kind of heads that up. So we played Friday night and lost a. He has a very interesting take on grass. So he had kind of a spread deck, and kind of the first time I played it,
Hmm.
it was a very close game one, and he ended up taking it. But then I kind of realized like, okay, I don't need to overbench here because I was playing colorless. It's just one of the better decks, but just kind of trying to play each different style just to kind of get used. And so
Yeah.
then I kind of realized, okay, like I don't need to bench everything. I just really need to bench kind of like my heavy hitters. And so then all my support Pokemon aren't constantly getting damaged. So then he can take a 3 price turn or anything. So I was able to win that. I now play the top seed, which I think is a pretty big
Look at you.
GLC.
Heck
Yeah,
yeah.
pretty big GLC nut. So I'm probably going to get my butt handed to me, but we'll see. Like I said, just all kind of luck of the draw. If hopefully play something that he's either weak to my deck or I'm not least weak to his. So, but
Yeah.
then it was tough because we had Worlds as well too. So had a full work week, and then Saturday we'd kind of planned to do a family day with my wife and our son, and then her sister and brother-in-law. We went down to the capital in Iowa and went to the zoo.
Nice.
And Archer, or our son, had a great time, being able to see everything. And then we went to the science museum. So I basically had to binge watch day one Saturday,
Yeah.
when we got back to the hotel, like right before, and then stayed into the night. Like they all went to bed, because everyone was passed out because we got up so early. But I went and got to like a cold brew
Oh man.
coffee, stayed up and got to like, I think I got to day two when Brander was playing, and then I ended up, falling asleep in the chair. So then
True
Sunday,
dad style. That's
yeah,
awesome.
true dad style. Yeah. And then Sunday got back and literally was, binge watching on like 1.5 speed, which is even quicker than I normally kind of watch it. And I think by the time I finished the finals in TCG for the Masters, I think I was only about 2-ish hours behind what the stream was, just because
Oh
obviously
nice.
Hawaii is so much different. So I was
Yeah.
able to catch up and go through, make some notes that we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
And then yeah, then we're here and in the now and ready to talk about it. So
Yeah. Dude, no, that was a lot. It was a busy week for both of us. And I'm not gonna lie, dude,
yeah.
it was so hard whenever I was messaging you on Discord to not somehow spoil it. Especially because I really want I was like, dude, like Jesse was a guest on the podcast and I really wanted to like share his updates because this is obviously before some of the things that happened. I was like, how cool is it that you had potentially the world champion on the podcast?
Oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
so, dude, I was trying so hard not to spoil it, but no, here we are. We're all caught up, and we've got a lot to cover this week. So, you want to
Yeah,
jump in?
we have a lot to cover. And first we're gonna kind of get through probably like an appetizer is what I'd like it,
Yeah,
just kind of some of the pre-world content that we were seeing people share and talk about. And yeah, if you kind of want to lead us into the first topic that we have here for kind of
yeah,
things that happened before the actual tournament.
yeah, for sure. And also, just a caveat to forgive us if there are any technical difficulties here with the video. Like we mentioned earlier, this is new to us, new to me. So I think I have it all correct. But we shall see. But anyways, one of the things I thought was pretty cool, and one of the things I really loved keeping up with any major event in the Pokemon TCG, is just following. If you're not there, you quickly learn that you have quite a lot of FOMO. Sure, Aaron, you've had that many times. I know I have. Seeing all the people I've met through Twitter, met at regionals, getting to go and have fun. And so, I the whole weekend I was just bookmarking and saving posts, and this was one that really got me some big time FOMO here. One of our friends from the Shift Gear podcast, Kieran posted King Dre hosted a massive basketball tournament, which is so cool to see. People in the community getting together, playing Pokemon together. There's another one, King Turk had a Pokemon rap. I don't think I can show that here because I don't think the audio will come through, but you could always go onto their Twitter and find it there too, which is pretty cool. I don't think it links to it anyways, but anyways, so that was pretty neat. Then of course too, you got to see all of the debacles happening over at the Pokemon Center, which to be fair, I'm not surprised. I remember that happening time and time again, whether it be in IC or last year's World. So yeah, no, it wasn't too shocked. And there were quite a few big names in the community posting their dissatisfaction with it, rightfully so. Like, even in things like there's this whole debate between, should content creators get to go first or should the competitors get to go first too? So, I think that could be a whole nother conversation. I do think there needs to be some unity between the two, but I also understand like the competitors who get there worked hard all season to get to where they are, so they deserve a spot too. So I don't, but
Yeah.
also at the same rate, like the content creators worked hard to get there as well. So I think TPCI needs to find a way to make a better balance or just double their supply because it's clear that people want what TPCI has to offer. And also then of course finding a way to get the scalpers out. Like all it takes is a couple bad eggs to ruin it for everybody, unfortunately. Then, of course, some of the other stuff that happened, the players check in and swag. If you remember in years past, I think I remember vividly being new to the TCG and seeing all the stuff in Japan last year and how miserable and hot it was. Same thing happened in Hawaii. Hawaii is also humid and hot. And so people were waiting 2 hours to check in and pick up their swag, things like that. And then all along the way, too, there were some cute things that happened. So Seijin Park got to post a little Pekarisu. I loved seeing this, 10 years after he got to bring it back to his team, which is neat. And then we got to see a jump scare. One of my favorite jump scares, or lack thereof. Tord had posted this. And when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, is this for real? He posted my first deck, handshake, my last deck. And when I first read that, I was like, is this like low-key a Tord retirement post before he even gets to win the World Championship and truly solidify himself as the GOAT? And then shortly after, he said, latest, don't worry. It's like, thanks for
Yeah.
scaring literally everybody,
Everyone.
Tord. You scared
Yeah.
everyone. And maybe not everyone, but I know I retweeted this. So at least 500 people potentially saw this retweet. But yeah, no, there's lots to see and do before. I think that's what makes these experiences so cool. And I'm excited. We'll talk about it later, but next year Worlds is in a more accessible place for a lot of people. So like, even if I don't qualify, I 100% plan on going and spectating because we love the West Coast and it would just be a fun trip as well. So cool experience, cool to see people having fun. It's a business trip for a lot of people, but it's also a place to go and to have fun. Teams were going fishing. I saw the CGC people going out and deep sea fishing and things like that too,
Oh
going on
yeah.
hikes, basketball. So like, again, that's what makes Pokemon so cool is it's business, it's work, it's travel, it's leisure all in one. So yeah, lots of cool things happened before. I'm sure you all saw it on Twitter. I digress from there. We do need to move on.
Right. There is plenty to talk about, but we
Yeah.
wanted to give the most amount to actually the tournament. And the TCG didn't disappoint with both controversy and some high level play. But first, wanted to talk about that's what I noticed is because I wasn't watching it live, so I was watching it and the first game. We have a whole new overlay, Michael, which I think is actually pretty cool. You can see the the bench for everyone, like what they have, the HP, they use their abilities. So it is nice in terms of keeping track of what players are doing and have they retreated, have they attached for turns. So that actually is pretty phenomenal. The
Yeah.
only thought that I had is like I couldn't see what was in their hand, but the casters could. So and they had a great crew, covering all the matches during the 3 days of competition. But that's kind of what I missed is because you can't see that. So I wish, and I know the guy had said, there's 5 years in the making. Chris Brown said, "Hey, this has been worked on, for feedback." And like the number one thing is like, can we just remove it every now and then so then we can see the players' hands?
Yeah.
I know all the fidgeting, all the top players do, the flicking and stuff like that. Obviously, sometimes that's just over excessive. But it would be kind of nice to marry the two of being able to see the player's hands. So then you can think of what they're going to do, right? Because that's obviously what we're trying to do to get better is
Yeah.
see what's in their hand and be like, well, this is the play that I do. And especially for someone like Azul that does a lot of whatever major tournaments he doesn't attend. So like a lot of the European ones and Japan ones, he'll do a VOD on it, and then he'll pause it, what's in their hand, this is what they should do, they didn't do this, or they did do this. And with this, you don't always see what's in their hand till they actually play the card, which is kind of unfortunate. But what were your thoughts on just kind of the graphic overlay of the kind of new presentation?
Yeah, no, I loved it. To be completely honest with you, I think when I saw Chris's tweet about this, and for those of you who don't know, Chris is obviously, and you can see it here on the top right too. He's the director of global esports and events producer for Pokemon. So Chris works for TPCI. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that like 5 years is a long time to think and to put effort into creating this, and I think it's so cool that Pokemon spent so much time and truly making this such a spectacle. And it's more than just people coming in and playing cards. Like they're putting so much time and energy into it. I was blown away by the, and I think my wife and I were even watching it, and she's like, "Oh man, are they actually like having like when a Pokemon takes a hit, like they're putting in the graphics and they're putting in the animations to show their HP bar dropping too." So
Yeah.
it made it feel more like the video game and things like that too. So it kind of bringing the card game to life, if you will, and I thought that was just so cool and so well thought out. And like even just the details of energy attachments, like on this picture here, you can see Reggie Drago had a grass and a light and a fire energy attached to it. On the picture of the card, not the actual card. Obviously, you could see it, but I just thought like those
Yeah.
tiny details were so neat. And like you said too, I think a lot of the comments down below were, hey, like Zach Lesage said, I like it. Only suggestion is to rotate the information between player cam, accomplishment, prize cam, bench, and anything else that might be cool as they are relevant. Looks sick though. And I agree. Like that's kind of what you had called out. And I think in day two, maybe I was just more aware of this and like, or maybe I was just looking for it more. But I think in day two, maybe they made some small tweaks. I mean, I need to go back and watch the difference between some day one streams and day two, but I think they did do a better job in day two. And Aaron, I don't know if you noticed that too. I know you're speed running
Oof.
through it. Do
Yeah,
you
I was.
recall like, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, yeah, I was speed running, so like it was one of those where I was just trying to get not skip any of the matches and just try to get
Right,
everything
right.
things through. But
Yeah,
as you kind of said, I was nodding my head. I was like, you know what, I should probably kind of go back and rewatch a couple matches from day one and then look at day two because maybe they did make some slight adjustments. But I
yeah.
loved the amount of detail that went
Oh,
into
I
the
know.
overlay, and especially the pricing,
Hmm.
having them there and then referencing them again of like this is what were in the prizes and this is what they've taken. I even loved how they kind of grade that out so you knew that they
Yeah.
took an Arvin and a rare candy, for example, from their last two
Yeah.
prizes.
Well, and it just looks so much cleaner too, right? Like, cause in the past, and still, it's pretty cool how they did it with the camera from underneath the table where the cards laid on the glass. But like, from an aesthetic perspective, it did get messy. As players grab the
Yeah.
cards, they're all kind of cockeyed and things like that too. But so like, this just was so clean. Like, just the production value just went through the roof, and it's really cool to see. And this isn't to throw shade at like Yu-Gi-Oh and things like that, but I did see on Twitter today someone comparing I think YCS over in Sacramento or somewhere out in West Coast, and then they like had just a bunch of people walking in a really bland convention center, and then they had Pokemon Worlds, and obviously they're two different things. What YCS and Worlds are totally different levels of competition,
Yeah.
but still like it's cool to see that the Pokemon company is putting so much time and so much energy and a huge investment, right? Like this is people they're paying on their payroll to develop these kind of things and to make them what they are too. So here I am struggling over OBS to do a tiny little thing like this, like we did for the podcast. Meanwhile, you have these incredible graphics coming out too. So no, kudos to the TPCI for doing this and for caring about the people in the game enough. I know we give TPCI a lot of crap for a lot of different things, and while they're not perfect, they're obviously trying. And this is really cool. So I loved it. I loved it.
Yes, a step in the right direction is what I'll say, and I'm looking forward to Baltimore. Speaking of which, that you get to attend and hopefully make it
Crazy.
on stream.
We'll
But
see.
I am curious to see a little bit of the tweaks that they make from there if they kind of go through because obviously the Worlds is going to have a much bigger production scale. But we'll see with
Yeah.
things, or at least it looks like TPCI is more managing, at least in the North America, I should say, I shouldn't just say US, but North America circuit. Looks like they are kind of, basically this is our show, this is what we're going to do. So
Right.
good things. And then it's always nice at Worlds. We always get to see Puka and talk about a legend
Yes.
uh, in the
Gosh,
community. He had
one of the
posted,
best.
was it 10 years ago or maybe even longer? It was him and it looked like a very young Michael Pramerat, casting and going through. And boy, they looked very, very young. But that's what I always like to hear.
Yeah.
And I think it was 2 seasons ago, he randomly would kind of show, but as they kind of filled out their
The
casters,
cast.
uh, yeah, the cast even further. He just last season he didn't show up to Worlds. Same with this season, and it
Yeah.
was cool to see him back. And then
Mhm.
I just think the world for him for what he brings, and he works for TPC as well too. And it
Yeah.
was cool because then he kind of had a get to know your caster segment, which is kind of what I was trying to do, getting some of the casters on this podcast to get to know more of them, not just as a caster, but like actual a player and a person as well too. What's their Pokemon journey, and I would love to have them kind of rejoin. But yeah, it was always fun seeing Puka to come back. And then if you're ready, we can kind of get into the meat potatoes of what the
Let's
meta
do it.
looked like in day one.
Yeah.
So we were collectively we were there. So we both said Reggie Drago V Star is probably going to be the number
Number
one.
one. Yeah.
I was confident that it wasn't going to get over 20%, but I could see it getting up there. And boy, was I wrong! It got up
I think
to
we
over
both were.
24%.
Bro, I think I said like 15% of the meta share, and I was almost 10% off,
Yeah,
which is wild to me. Wild.
which is amazing that and you know that leave it to the players. They probably had tested the mirror a whole lot more.
Yeah.
Just from someone that has loved the deck for as long as I had. The first time when it started to kind of get more popular through NAIC, and I played it on the ladder against myself, or against someone. I was like, man, I haven't played a Reggie Draco mirror in a very, very long time. So
Yeah.
that was the first. I think you had said Lugia probably was going to be the second, and these were, I mean, we're talking just a couple different, two
Yeah.
decks, two deck choices. So Charizard rounded in at number two. It had 147 decks, so just under 13%,
Yeah.
12.83, and
But
then Lugia followed up with 145 decks, and then Gardevoir, which we both assumed was going to be in that top 3 to 4. I thought it would actually get a little bit above Archeops Lugia, but I suppose people were kind of anticipating a lot of Reggie Drago, which Lugia can fare well against. And then we had Raging Bolt, Ogrepon come in at 107 decks, so 9.34. And then rounding it out, we had 63 Quad Iron Thorns decks.
yeah,
And on the
talk about
graph,
a massive surprise to everybody except for maybe Kevin Clemente.
yeah, Quad Iron Thorns, and then on the graphic, they of course put in Crushing Hammer, which we'll get into all the coin flips in not too distant future.
Yeah.
And then day two was actually interesting because Reggie Drago actually overperformed, so it went up to 27.5%.
Hmm.
Lugia stayed pretty solid. It gained about almost a percent, had 13, just over 13%.
Yeah.
Charizard went down to 11.81, and Ogrepon, yeah, Raging Bolt went up to just under 12, and then 10 Iron Thorn decks converted, and then actually only 9 Gardevoir decks. So Gardevoir was not the play like we were thinking.
Yeah.
Just very quickly, any thoughts on kind of where the meta, and they never showed kind of the rest. I would have loved to have seen that, but because I was kind of curious on Ancient Box that we talked about. I know Tina made it on stream early in day one, which I was like, ooh,
Yeah.
maybe that could be right because we kind of talked about a little couple unknown and like Maridon too. We had mentioned, but we didn't really get to see that second day or second graphic of day one to see like actually what was the seventh most plays deck. But I think you were pulling up maybe uh
Yeah, I can't
like
find
Ray
it.
Evans.
Uh,
Yeah. Okay.
I can't find it right now. But yeah, just some quick thoughts on the meta. I thought that you called out that there was only 9 Gardevoir that showed up in day 2.
Day two. Yeah.
To be honest with you, the conversion rate, it was well, let me back up. The conversion rate was a little bit. I wasn't expecting it to be that poor for the deck.
Yeah.
However, it makes sense. Like, right, you think about some of like the top Guardy players that are out there. Obviously, some of the Guardy players that were out there that have been Guardy stands for the whole season still played it. But like, look at Natalie, who's on the podcast. Natalie kind of like low key threw in what she was going to be playing and what her team was going to be playing. But typically, you would expect Natalie and the Aussies to be on Gardevoir, and they showed up with Reggie Drago, right? So it like at first glance, it's surprising that Gardevoir did not convert as well as we typically would expect to see it. But then when you really think about who was playing what, it kind of makes sense that Gardevoir kind of fell off a little bit. And really, not to mention it already kind of has some bad matchups in those top tier decks as well. Obviously Reggie Drago can quickly wipe the board. Lugia depends on how well it's played, things like that. It could go quickly, go south quickly for them. Charizard has a pretty decent Gardevoir matchup too. So it almost got hated out. And then when you factor in the extra layer, the fact that some of the top players in the world who would typically be playing the deck abandoned, and they made a good decision, right? They knew the meta, they knew what to expect. They spent a ton of time testing, and so it wasn't the best call there. Not to say that it's gonna go away, but I think right now it's just not the time. And it's a much faster meta than Guardy, and a lot of those bigger stage 2 decks just have a harder time setting up. So interesting, and of course, obviously Iron Thorns. I think I was trying to find Kevin Clemente's tweet about it, and I couldn't come across it. But I know a couple days
I know the
before.
exact one you're talking about too.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
a day before. Yeah.
yeah. He came on and he was saying something like, what's the over under that 30 plus Iron Thorns show up to Worlds,
Yep.
and well, that sure doubled quite a bit. So pretty
Are you looking
crazy.
at his personal one or the Lake of Rage podcast one?
I'm looking at his personal one. I guess it might be on the Lake of Rage
Oh,
one.
maybe on the Lake of Rage. But what I was going to
But yeah,
say is, you just while you look that up, is there is just a lot of the top testing groups played Reggie Drago. There's a few, like you saw, like Rahul. He didn't play Reggie Drago, like Bradner. He and that group actually sometimes famously kind of chooses their own decks and stuff like that. But you saw like Grant Shen, Sen Shen Pao as well too.
right.
I was curious because I know Azul and Grant Manley did not have the results that obviously they would have hoped for. I see Ryan Antonucci, who they were testing with. I don't know if he's still a part of that, but
Yep.
I don't. Ryan Antonucci played, Snorlax Stall, so I don't
Yeah.
know if that's what Azul and Grant and
They were,
played.
yeah. Yeah, they
Okay.
were. And I think, I don't know. Obviously, they spent a ton of time testing. I know I followed Grant on Twitter as well, and he actually put up a good discussion on their process behind it. Maybe it wasn't their favorite decision, but they still felt confident in it too. Unfortunately, though, I want to say both had win-in-ins, both Grant and Azul, and ironically, they both had win-in-ins against Ancient Box, which just is not a
Ooh.
good matchup for Snorlax Stall. And it's one of those situations where they didn't account for the fact that there was going to be Ancient Box, right? And there still wasn't. It didn't even make the. I think it was at the bottom of the second half of the meta share. So I just don't think they were expecting that to show up. And then of course you factor in the random nature of pairing and how Tom pairs things for people. So it was just an unfortunate day for them. I don't think it is any way indicative of them as players. I think they have both had incredible runs. Obviously, Azul has some major wins, and Grant has had some top 8 finishes and things like that too. So yeah, interesting. And I think going into Worlds, a lot of people maybe thought Stall was going to be a little bit higher in the meta share, but I don't know. I guess people kind of backed away at the last minute.
Yeah, I sure did. And with Stall, obviously, it's a little bit of a matchup roulette.
Right.
You just, if you get paired against what you want to, maybe they had anticipated, Charizard possibly, being up there a little bit more. But
Mhm.
yeah, Azul finished at 5-3, so that makes sense. If he was at 5-2, he had a win and in, obviously. And then, like I said, you didn't see too much Ancient Box in Masters, but I know obviously Gabriel Fernandez was trying to go back to back Worlds, and
Yep.
he made top 4, and he posted his Ancient Box list, and
Yeah.
so I was trying to see, if there was anything in Worlds, but it didn't quite get there.
It was close.
But I
Diogo
thought,
Casaraga,
yeah,
who
yeah,
won Worlds back in 2017 with Gardevoir, he played Ancient Box, and I
yeah,
can't remember where he
which I
finished,
think
but
it
he.
might get a little bit more popular after after the event here. So
Yeah, no, I think it's
all
still
right, so
quite a viable deck for sure.
yeah, all right. So then that was the meta, and then I believe so then we get through day one, day two, and then they released the Masters Top Cut, which there was an asymmetric cut, which actually only 9 players actually made, so it wasn't that actually big. So Jesse Parker went undefeated, 12-0 in Swiss at Worlds. An amazing feat as I was, catching up on the delay and speeding through. Was absolutely, pumped to see him obviously perform. He was very gentlemanlike with his how much time we went through, and very friendly and openly, talking. And then we saw two predominant names in Ian Robb and Isaiah Bradner on Reggie Drago as well too. And then we had Michael Davison, who had just aged up this season.
Yeah.
He's on Team DGG. They just kind of had they kind of had a session in Chicago and released a lot of content that was top notch. And then he played in the winning in essentially versus Rahul to then face Jesse in round one. And so we had 4 Reggie Dragos make the top cut, aka 9 as well. Say Rahul's on Lugia, and then we had a Turbo Rory Moon EX, which maybe a little bit of an underdog. We had, of course, the Iron Thorns EX deck, and then we had a Miraidon, which Jesse was on, and then a Raging Bolt as well. Kind of on those names there, right? We see probably Bradner's probably maybe the most predominant name that you can think of. I know Rahul obviously has played the game for such a long time as well too. Jesse had really made a name for himself, and then Ian Rock was kind of a little bit of the storyline going into it, and obviously the storyline going after. But he had posted a tweet before the event of when he was a junior, playing with his little Pikachu hat and everything like that. And that was his first Worlds, right? Back in Honolulu,
Yeah,
or back
yeah.
in Hawaii.
Yep, in
And
Hawaii.
so he kind of posted that, and you can kind of wonder, like, could this be a time where a United States player wins it once again, right? And even we had Vance Kelly kind of sniffing around. He just kind of fell a little bit short. So that would have been the biggest storyline if he were to make top cut again as well too, but just fell a little bit short.
Yeah.
Before we go into the events of the top 8, just where are you thinking at? I mean, four Reggie Dragos in the top 9, decks. What are just your thoughts of kind of where things ended up for top cut?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, just with as heavy of a meta percentage as it had, when I saw that, I wasn't so shocked. It felt, I likened it to how NAIC was in the meta share there, and how Guardy had such a high meta share. So like, it's not surprising. And again, like I had mentioned too, right? Like the best players moved over to Reggie Drago, rightfully so. They saw the power. They saw just how versatile it could be. I know I loved watching Bradner's match. I can't remember what match it was on stream. I'll find it in a minute. But yeah, when he was against, it was the mirror match, right? Wasn't he? Yeah, it was this match right here.
Yes, yeah, it was the
Yoshiyuki.
mirror match. Yep.
Yeah, and so like just seeing the intricate lines play that he had, the double Kieran play, and like to see that and to see how it performed throughout the day, and even like Zach Lesage and Rahul Reddy's matchup too. Like it's no surprise. It's no surprise that there were that many that did well, especially when you look at the names of the people who played them. I mean, who continue to do well with the deck too. So, not gonna lie, I've never really been the biggest Drago fan. All that said, I've had to recently convert and rethink. Obviously, it's very real, so I'm definitely gonna do some more testing with it. But yeah, no, not too shocked. Again, the seeing something like a raging or the roaring moon, was not expecting that. It's almost like it didn't even exist. I kind of even forgot that roaring moon was a card that had some viability because we haven't seen it, but like it makes sense, right? It's the counter to the meta deck, right? And when you think about a lot of worlds, some of the decks that do see the most success in any worlds are the ones who successfully counter the top deck in the format, right? So when we look at this, Roaring Moon does a really good job into Draco for the most part. Miraidon, it hits that magic number pretty easily. especially when you're playing something like the Zapdos. Iron Thorns, it shuts down abilities. The deck, Regidrago thrives off abilities. So not too surprised to see some counters going in there, especially just seeing what the meta shaped up to be too. So yeah.
Yeah, which leads us into our after the win and so Rahul lost. So then Michael Davidson went on to play Jesse, which wasn't on stream, but we had our first stream match, which was Ian Robb. And this is obviously where all the controversy starts. We'll probably have a good tangent on Mr. Robb here for the next foreseeable few minutes. So we see him go against Quad Iron Thorns, which you would think, yikes, that sounds like a terrible matchup because Regidrago, having to get, cheat and get 3 hand attachments in is going to be very difficult because obviously and that you don't probably want to overcommit your canceling clone too early unless you have the play exactly, which we'll talk about. But in game one, he very smartly played the switch, got into Squawkabilly EX to accelerate a Grassland Fire Energy onto his Regidrago. And so you saw him play very smartly because then he ended up just doing Rolling Iron because that's going to be a 3-hit KO. Because the max amount that Iron Thorns can do is 160. And if you're doing minus 80 off that, and again, it's almost never doing that. It's usually doing 120 or 140 because it has a double turbo, and then depends if the future boot is there. But he played very smartly, just rolled his iron in. And then in game two, had an insane setup where he had Cancel and Clone early right away in his hand, and then he had it ready to go, and then played Cancel and Clone. Basically, he got to do whatever he wanted, but he just needed a vessel. He didn't really even need anything else, and then he was able to lost impact for game because there was only one Iron Thorns set up. And so you see him, and I put the link directly in our prep work, Michael. So if you go through it, and of course they scrubbed out the Jester afterwards, but there are some reports that TPCI said he didn't sign his match slip. So for those people watching Michael YouTube, the exact time, you can see Ian pick up the pen. You can see Ian circle his name, write his initials name. So this is where I get in. So we see him. We see him. The videos have all been scrubbed. But he makes a gesture. I'll keep this PG the best I can. Makes a gesture. I don't think it was against his opponent or anything. Some people were really trying to defend Ian to say, oh, he was doing the dice roll because obviously you flip a lot of coins when or I should say you roll a die. And he went through, you can see it go through. He does the interview. I kind of was rewatching that in the prep, and you can see one of the judges does tell Fernando to he kind of does this to Fernando to stay there right after they kind of get up to move. Ian does his full interview. Talks about, and then we saw Jesse won, so I was like, man, this is lining up pretty good for Jesse because Jesse's kind of been farming Regidrago all but in terms of because you see both top 4 matches. This is one of my favorite thing about Worlds is you get to see those. Exactly. And I was like, talk about 2 top level players. And then so I was kind of fast forwarding through everything. So I went through. I go to I go to Top Cut, and then all of a sudden I see Jesse playing Iron Thorns, and I was like, wait a second, what is going on? Because I skipped, I skipped through Chip talking about it and everything because I was just skipping. I was like, all right, just find where you see them start put out price cards, start watching. And so I was at a complete loss because I was like, wait a second, where's Ian at in the top bracket? So then I had to pause where I was at in the stream and get on Twitter and see literally everyone's face melting. So Ian did an immature gesture. I would say it's somewhat bad manners. But this is where I think it just sets a very dangerous precedent. And I know a lot of people, were tweeting in the post gap, Bradner was doing a fist pump. It was not the same thing as Ian.
Yeah.
You saw in Pokemon Go.
I saw John post something about y'all are just doing some mental gymnastics right now, and I agree.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And then you see Pokemon Go. They released that audio clip where the guy is doing a gesture and said, I could kiss you right now. And, that guy didn't get DQ'd. So it's
Yeah.
very weird. So I sent you the exact
Hmm.
so in the Pokemon Handbook, section 3, it's just 3441 is where I found it. It says match slips. A match slip serves as a written record of a result from any one match. Match slips must always be used at Pokemon TCG and Video Game Championship Series events. At the end of each match, the player should record the result as appropriate on the slip. Then both players should initial the slip and indicate they agree with the result. Once once a match slip is signed, that result is considered final. It is then the responsibility of the winner of the match to turn the match slips in directed by the organizer. So
So
the
the
key
key
is
is
once a match
once a
slip
match
has
slip
been
has been
signed, that
signed, that
result is
result is
considered
considered
final.
final.
This is
This
where
is
it's
where it's
really
really
weird,
weird
where
where
Ian
Ian
wins,
wins,
and
and
by
by
reports
reports
that have
that
now
have now
come
come
out,
out,
because
because
obviously
obviously
TPCI
TPCI
is
is
not
not
going
going
to
to
issue
issue
anything
anything
standard
standard
other
other
than
than
have
have
Chip
Chip
say,
say,
"Hey,
"Hey,
he's
he's
been
been
DQ'd."
DQ'd."
That's
That's
basically all
basically
we
all we
got,
got.
and
And
it
it
was
was
really
really
odd
odd
that
that
allegedly,
allegedly,
again,
again,
this
this
is
is
JW
JW
Craywell.
Craywell.
If
If
you
you
go
go
look
look
for
for
him,
him,
he,
he,
he
he
had
had a great video. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
he
he
had
had
a
a
good
good
about
about
11-minute
11-minute
video
video
kind of
kind of
recapping.
recapping.
It's
It's
probably
probably
what
what
Ian
Ian
probably
probably
told
told
Jesse,
Jesse,
and
and
Jesse
Jesse
probably
probably
told
told
JW.
JW.
Allegedly,
Allegedly,
I
I
won't
won't
say
say
that
that
is
is
actually
actually
factual,
factual,
but
but
goes
goes
through
through
and talks
talks
about
about
Ian
Ian
basically
basically
was,
was,
hey,
hey,
you
you
can
can
either
either
be
be
DQ'd
DQ'd
or
or
you
you
can
can
given a
given a
match
match
loss
loss
and
and
you
you
get
get
to
to
keep
keep
the
the
prize
prize
money.
money.
And
And
this
this
is
is
where
where
I
I
just
just
don't
don't
understand it,
understand
because it sets a very dangerous precedent. Like we have a judge here, Nick Robinson, that actually I think made top 8 with Maridon, like towards the winter, I want to say, because it was cold out. And then
and then
he
he
puts
puts
on
on
the
the
Iowa
Iowa Cup.
Cup Marathon, where all week they have, or it's like Wednesday through Sunday or something like that. It's 5 days in a row where there's a cup and then like a challenge at stores in down towards the Capitol in Des Moines. And he's a judge, and does a lot of judging, even at some events.
Judge doing a lot of judging.
Yeah, Judge doing a lot of judging, and Nick even talked about like this is kind of unprecedented, and it just sets a very very dangerous precedent of things aren't actually done if they are done and signed and everything from the rule book. So I feel bad for Ian. Did I think he deserved to get DQ'd? I could see merit to that. You're on stream. This is a children's card game.
Yeah.
You have probably young kids looking up to someone of his stature because he is a prominent name. But given the fact that he was in top 4 versus Jesse, and they retroactively say, "Oh no, you lose in top 8," Fernando, who lost and probably was like, man, I made top 8. He just aged up in the Masters this season. Who even knows if was in the event center still, if he had left or anything, and then gets called and be like, oh, by the way, you have to go play top 4. And then
Mhm.
I had you know messaged Jesse directly, just saying, hey, you killed it. Like, I was super happy and was cheering you on, obviously, to win, and just kind of said like, I'm super sorry that the organizer decided to change things, because Jesse would have been in the finals, and
Right.
rightfully. This is, I think, my biggest issue, and then I'll let you elaborate because I need to take a sip of water. But this is where I think is it's very unfortunate for Jesse. I can't get mad at Fernando. He's just
Yeah.
doing what it was told, but TPCI, I think, has to wear this on the chin, and I don't think we're going to see a public statement, which is unfortunate.
Right. Yeah.
It's really weird for someone to get DQ'd but get to keep their prizing. So it's just wishy washy, and I am someone of not of that ilk. It's either you do it or
Yeah.
you don't, and you're honest and forthright with whatever
Right.
you commit. And I just it felt really weird, and obviously played a huge role on the event. Now again, Jesse won game 1, lost game 2 to Fernando, and then game 3 prize 3 electric
Prizing.
generator.
Bro, what are those
And
prizes? It's like
yeah,
it reminded me
and
of Charlotte with Vinny Fernandez prizing the Giratina. It's just crazy. What are
yeah,
they? Yeah.
and seeing Jesse go through his pricing, because by then I kind of caught up, so I wasn't watching it on 1.5
Yeah.
speed. But
Right.
he goes through it, and then he goes one more time, then one more time. You kind of just see him go, like, okay, I guess this is what's going to happen.
This is my
And again,
reality.
Fernando has to flip heads on a bunch of crushing hammers, play some judges, all that sort of stuff. But I just felt, because it felt like what actually played and happened. You know, bad gestures aside, they altered 2024 Worlds, and I think that is just something that I still am not quite over after it happening. And obviously, me just finding out yesterday and not seeing
Yeah.
everything melt on Saturday night. But that's my thing is they literally changed the result of Worlds, and Jesse should have been in. Jesse has been actually a champion, being like Fernando's a great
Hmm.
kid. Like I'm so happy
Absolutely.
that he won. He has
Yeah.
taken zero bad qualms. Like I messaged him, he's like, hey, dude, he's like, I got top three, I got top four. I get an automatic invite for Worlds next year. And he's like, it just makes me want to get that first W because that's what he talked about in the podcast. He
Yeah.
just wants to get a W next to his
Yeah.
name. So props for him. Before we get into the other side of the bracket, I'll let you speak on the Ian Robb situation.
Yeah, no, I think you shared a lot of my similar sentiments there too. First off, before I go in any further, again, Fernando, congratulations. If you ever hear this podcast, like, congratulations on an incredible run. Like, to take something like Iron Thorns to go to the biggest world championship ever. I know we said that about every single tournament this season as well, but to literally go to the biggest event in terms of what was at stake, and to do it at such a young age. And like, it sucks for him. Like, so I think my big thing, and really, like, kind of as a dad, like, I kind of see this as, like, collateral damage. Collateral damage is something very real that we as humans have to understand and to learn. Maybe this is going a bit existential here too. Do I think that any of the three that were like directly impacted, like, do I think we should be throwing hate at any of them? Maybe more like, again, I love Ian Robb. He was on my fantasy team. Like, the guy is an incredible competitor who made a really, in the moment, kind of a dumb decision, right? Like, you're on stream, do something a little bit different, right? Like, I know your buddies are out there, but at the same rate, he's still a person. He's still relatively young. I think he is in school or about to graduate. Like, we've all been there, right? Doesn't
Yeah.
make it doesn't make it right. I'm not saying that I condone that. But that said, like, it just sucks because that decision, and like, we have these conversations with our 6-year-old son all the time. It's like, maybe you didn't do something, but that person that you were spending some time around in your class did something, and you got in trouble because of it. It doesn't make it fair to you. But that's just the collateral damage. And obviously I don't share collateral with my 6-year-old because I don't think he would ever understand what that means. But that's what this whole situation brings to life here. And do I think that's fair? I don't. I think that the entity that needs to be the one responsible for, like, just coming clean about the whole situation is TPCI. I don't blame the
Yeah.
judges. I think the judges too, like, as you know, with the Pokemon TCG, as anyone knows with the Pokemon TCG, there are so many gray areas. Like, even here, like, pulling up this, Mahone had a long thread about this too, and even this is just like one example of it. So this person here highlights and says, sign the slip clearly should have applied to the next match based off the 7-2-6-2 in the application. When issuing a match loss penalty during an active game, the game is recorded as a loss for the player receiving the penalty. If this penalty is issued between rounds, the penalty is
Oh
applied to the
wow.
player's next match. But then you can see here, like, someone commented, says signing the slip does not officially conclude the match, just submitted, not accepted. So, like, there's so much gray area. So again, I have a hard time faulting the judges here too. I think I've seen some people throwing some shade to some extent at the judges. I don't even put that at 6. So, like, I think at the end of the day, it's hard for me to say, like, you and you were all in the right, you were in the wrong. Like, it's more gray than that. Um, Again, I think the decision that Ian made in that moment, dude, I could think of so many other countless ways to celebrate a win like that than the way
Oh
he did.
yeah.
And
Um.
maybe he was rolling. I don't know. I will say though, one of my buddies on Twitter had posted they were listening to Mahone's stream today, and he did confirm that Ian Robb admitted that it was not a dice roll gesture, and this was all on Tricky Gem's Twitch stream today. So if you
Oh.
go and
Okay.
find that,
Yeah.
if you want to, you can go and listen to that where Mahone talks about that too. So, and if Mahone is saying it, I believe it. Not just because he's one of Jesse's best friends in the game. I truly believe that Mahone was being methodical and doing his research and talked to the source themselves with Ian.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
So
props for Ian for like not trying to. He was probably
yeah,
forthcoming, right? he came
Right.
out and said Fernando's a great kid. And, like, I wish him nothing. There's just no will towards him. He was actually tweeting where
Yeah, I'll pull
TPCI
that up real quick
goes
or
down.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, so I give again, while immature, but like I give Ian full props for actually talking and not trying to hide, behind
Behind
anything.
anything.
So
So it's just
like I said,
like I said,
it's
it's
unfortunate
unfortunate
because they
because they
literally
literally
altered
altered
what the
the
competition
competition
was
was
going to
going to
be
be
because
because
Ian
Ian
beat
beat
Fernando,
Fernando.
and
And
changing
changing
that
that
event
event,
when
when
things
things
in
in
the
the
rule
rule
book
book
basically
basically
tell
tell
everything
everything
to
to
us,
us,
right?
right?
That
That right.
Ian
Ian
should
should
have
have
been
been
given
given
a
a
match
match
loss
loss
in
in
top
top.
four, which then therefore Jesse wins.
Right.
So we have all that going on, and then we have the other side of the bracket that was playing.
Yeah.
So we see the Raging Bolt gets taken out by the Roaring Moon EX. That was actually
Hmm.
a pretty fun match. I would say, like I said, all of day two's matches I thought were
Oh
pretty
yeah,
top
they're
notch.
fantastic.
Um, and then we didn't get to see, but Bradner lost to Raz Wolp, which
Hmm.
don't know how to pronounce the last name, but from Israel. And I do remember him seeing, because I think he got close to a top cut at Liverpool
Yeah.
last
Yeah.
season, the season before. So it was kind of a name, and probably more so. I don't remember all the names, but like when they've been on stream, you kind of remember. I'm a very visual learner, such as probably like yourself with learning OBS, so we can get live on stream tonight. But I was like, oh, okay. And
We
then
have
Sine Suke from
Suke
Japan.
from Japan.
Also, like
Also,
Fernando
like
and Michael
Fernando and
Davidson,
Michael
all
Davidson,
aged up
all aged
into
up
Masters this
into
year. So
Masters
this
this
was
year. So
definitely a Young Bucks top cut. It seemed like not a lot of old players in there. Like last year, where we had Tord and Michael Pramrat, obviously, kind of holding up the Pokedad vibe, but we had him go through Total Metacall. I was just going through his matchup on Pokedata.ovh. And actually, he don't know what he played the first 4 rounds, but I don't know if they ended up like it says that he was beating Dragapults, but when I clicked on some of those deck lists, it's actually Reggie Drago.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take him as that they were Reggie Drago. And yeah, he farmed them. Beat a couple Lugias along the way, beat a Quad Iron Thorns
Hmm.
in round 12, basically, obviously, to guarantee getting into top cut. Like I
Yeah.
said, the Raging Bolt matchup was pretty fun. And then kind of ran Raz off the floor in that other semifinal matchup. From what I recall, I don't think it was very close at all.
No,
I
no,
think
it's pretty quick.
Reggie
Yeah.
Drago just did not get off, and turn two. It's nice when you can go 220 with
Yep.
an attack into stadium,
Yeah. Well,
or
and
you
I
just say
mean,
you're deleted.
right. I mean,
Also as
the
well.
number's perfect, right? Like,
Yeah.
but it's like the perfect storm for that matchup. Reggie Drago wants to go
Yep.
first. Roaring Moon wants to go
Yep.
second. Roaring Moon could very well easily pull off a turn one knockout right there, and it's not uncommon for there to be a Pokestop in play, especially too. So yeah, it makes
Yeah.
sense there, I think. But again, the whole thing I mentioned earlier, that was a counter to what they expected to be
Hmm.
one of the best decks played. And I think it's funny too. I was just looking at this too for Asinosuke. Let me find it really quick. I just had it pulled up too. I don't know if you check on Limitless, how crazy would it be for your one and only Limitless to
Yeah.
be a
I see
second
what
place
you're looking.
finish, winning 30,000 USD? Like that's just wild to me. And even like looking at Fernando too, it's crazy. His first season in Masters, 36th at region, 36th and 34th at a regional, and then first place.
Yeah.
Which it's cool. I did not look this up beforehand. This is interesting. Like obviously there is a keenness to some control decks. You can tell this
Yeah.
wasn't just a completely random deck for him. He played Snorlax back in March, so cool to see that. But yeah, no, it's wild to see.
Yes. And so we see them win, and then we talked about Jesse, winning game one, losing
Yeah,
game two, and then trying to make the best of a bad situation in game three. But if you're Rhydon and you don't have abilities, you don't play Canceling Clone, because you played Bundle, of course. If you price 3 Electric Generator, there's just not a really good, easy way to cheat that energy in.
right, right.
Obviously, Fernando flipped a lot of heads as well,
Those
too.
dice were
And
on fire,
hot.
bro.
Yeah, yeah. And
He needs to play
he was able
Lugia.
to. Yeah, and Jesse had to be very calculative when he benched that
Yeah,
Zapdos, right? Because that's how he hits a clean 230. And
exactly.
obviously, as soon as that went down, a Pokemon catcher, of course, came up.
Felt bad. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and I think anytime you, so I saw, boy, I should have given them credit, but saw on Twitter, and probably if people are in the Pokemon Twitter, they probably saw it too. But I think it speaks a lot to the format of ADP days and Eterna's VMAX days when that came in. I know, Michael, you weren't quite back into standard.
Mhm.
That was probably right before kind of I was going through,
Yeah.
but they
Definitely
talked
played him.
about that of
Yeah.
like when you're seeing a lot of decks play, Pokemon catchers or crushing hammers,
Right.
like it reminded them of the Eterna's VMAX and ADP days, which
Yeah.
a lot of people regard as maybe the worst format that you could play.
Yeah.
But anyway, we have two very young kids that just mastered, both 17, which
Crazy.
being someone that's 36 years old, yikes, you know.
Mhm.
But props to them. I think they had two very, clean lists as well
Yeah.
too. I really liked the double Petront in the Roaring Moon EX from Sinosuke, double squawk ability. So he played four Roaring Moon EX, and then he had a baby Roaring Moon as well too. Uh, and actually both decks featuring Judge. So it'll be interesting when they print the world's decks out. It's going to be such a troll
I
to have an
saw
Iron Thorns EX deck as your, and they have
Oh
the,
man, it's funny. I
the world's
saw
winning deck.
I don't remember who posted
And
about
I know
it.
Drew.
But I definitely I'm pretty sure I reposted it because of how funny it was. But imagine being a kid waking up on Christmas Day,
Yeah.
getting this as your Christmas
Yep.
present and seeing four Pokemon and only four Pokemon in your deck. Like how pissed would they
Yeah.
be? Yeah, here it is. This person, Britt. Let me
Yeah.
pull it up here really quick because I thought it was too funny to see.
Oh,
It
yeah. Yeah.
says,
Please do.
let's all discuss the elephant in the room. Some little kid is going to crack open a Pokemon World's player deck for Christmas this year and have a meltdown when it has four Pokemon and they're all the same. Like, imagine not knowing what the heck's going on. And you think your parents are like
Yeah.
memeing you or
Yeah.
something like that with this deck, which is crazy. Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Crazy, crazy.
So
I'm
yeah,
pulling
I'll
up
be
these
interested.
here
So yeah,
too.
I'll be interested to go through. We did see. Yeah, please. Yeah, that's what. That's what I have. So I have the runner-up finish. So I have the runner-up finish.
So
Four Roaring Moon EX. Roaring Moon two Petrant EX, which has a really cool ability. We probably talked about it. When it came out. Once during your turn, you may switch when your bench dark Pokemon, except any Petron EX, with your active Pokemon. So we talked about obviously this is really good in the stall as well too, and then
Exactly.
you talked about you're a big fan of the Binding Mochi tool to do more damage. And then if you do, the new Pokemon is now poisoned, which okay, not the worst. And you can't do this more than and
one.
actually, I don't know, but and again, like I said, I was kind of watching it fast because Quad Iron Ford versus Roaring Moon EX, like not the most enjoyable, finals to watch as well too. Obviously, very high drama, so
Yeah.
much money on the line, obviously, and being a world's winner. But it had a really good attack of 60 times damage. So each damage charge your opponent is taking, it ramps up, and I don't know. It's odd that you never like kind of maybe thought about that as a one way to KO something.
Yeah, it was in that moment too where he was attaching to the baby moon. That's where we were talking a lot about that in our locals Discord.
Oh sure, yeah.
It's just one of those like, and again, maybe he didn't really test this matchup, but because this card it's broken. It really for two dark energies, you could do a lot of damage too. So,
And
maybe obviously being in the heat of the moment, like it really all coming down to that. So just very interesting. The list in general is pretty neat. I don't know if you've had a chance to pick it up and play it, but I played it some last night and I really like it. It's just super aggressive. I'm not typically one for super aggro decks, but this is really fun to play. And again, like you'd mentioned, really clean, just well thought out.
Yeah.
You can tell he spent a lot of time thinking about it, and really putting the energy to like figuring out an efficiently aggressive and consistent deck, is what this really seems like to me. Like going double squawk is brilliant, right? Because just the amount of cards you're able to see that turn one and how important squawk is to your setup, it's impressive.
you need darkness and energy, or you need the darkness energy in the discard pile.
Exactly.
You have Radiant Greninja. The kind of the cool things normally with that you normally see maybe like even up to 4 Pokegears, kind of like the Raging Bolt Oricon deck as well too. But he actually cut those down to 2 and put in 2 Judge. So he has the 4 Soundless Vitality, which is a must in any ancient basically box type of deck, and then 2 Judge. Yeah, and then one Boss's Order, obviously the 4 Dark Patch, 4 Vessel, 4 Nest Ball, 4 Ultra Ball, 4 Trek and Chew, 4 Pokemon Catcher, and then 4 Pokestops.
Yep.
That is just, you're going to maximize your math just in playing the max amount. And anytime there's 4 Trek and Chews in a deck, like I'm always kind of like a little partial to it, because I've always felt that card is underutilized. But I get it, right? You only see 2 cards, but in something like this where you want certain things in your discard pile to then help your deck run. And the Prime Catcher obviously is a must. The Night Stretcher I do like to be able to recover Pokemon or an energy to attach return, because he's not playing any energy recovery besides the Sada to cheat in, so he's not playing anything. So I do like that.
Yeah, Dark Patch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Dark Patch.
Yeah, the one of Night Stretcher too, but yeah, not much. Yeah. Not much.
Yeah, so no retrieval. Back obviously in terms of like an energy retrieval or superior energy retrieval that you would see in like the baby ancient box deck. Because I would say this is Turbo Roaring Moon, 1 Palpet, and then you have 9 Darkness Energy, and I really do probably like that count. I think you saw like a lot of lists like with 8 in kind of online scene, but Sinosuke, props to him for having an amazing run and being a world's runner up. And then he played against Fernando, and this is a typical list is what I would say for Quad Iron Thorns. Maybe a little bit different than what we maybe saw before the event. Quad Iron Thorns. That's the easiest thing to talk about. And with all of these, I think what is the exact count? So if we did 11, 15, 45 trainer cards. So fun times ahead. So for
Arvin Rizzler himself in here as well. Giovanni's Charisma. What a cool card to include to this deck. And pretty neat.
And I'll talk about this. And I'll talk about the sport if you want all the coin flips that he did.
Yeah.
So the Arvin.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. For Arvin, research, which I think is because you need to see cards. 3 Judge is probably the highest count we've seen. 3 Bosses Orders, 2 of the new Chorus Tenacity that gets you a Stadium and an Energy card. So that's really key on those knockout turns to be able to grab a Lost City and a Double Turbo. 2 of those, Niono, and Penny's kind of a must-have. And then playing against this and Brett in our Season 2 challenge, I was playing Ida Win, Item Lock, Benet EX, playing Quad Thorns. And you think Benet EX, should sweep through this, but not exactly because that Giovanni's Charisma, Brett was playing 2, and like that is actually a really key card to disrupt, especially in that sort of deck, because I could never do the big damage to count all the trainer cards in their hand. And then obviously that's the supporter line. Really good. I like the Judge. Judge. We haven't really seen since the Arctina days, or even Arceus was probably more of a prime deck to get played. But that's the supporter line. And like I said, I think is either his brother or his dad posted that he didn't really kind of sit on the list till like Wednesday. And built it and then just sent it. So talk about whole time just send it. As well too, if you want to kind of touch on the rest of the deck list, anything that you want to stand out. There's one really key tool card that is probably some of the most important part of it, but go ahead.
No, you've got, obviously we all watched him play the coins. The coins were they were going in his way, right? Crushing Hammer, being able to remove an energy card from your opponent. We saw that in the top 4 matchup, right? In the finals matchup where he was able to just move energies, and that really just sets your opponent back and makes you have to rethink how you're going to do things. It's disruptive, right? That's what the card exists for. Pokemon Catcher, same thing. If you hit Pokemon Catcher at the right time, and we saw it with both decks too. in top four, Shinsuke was able to hit heads when he needed to hit heads and just have these pivotal turns. Same thing here with Fernando. Obviously, you got your Techno Radars to get out your Iron Thorns. Canceling Clone, really cool inclusion into this list too. To be fair, I've not really played a ton of Iron Thorns in the past, but I
A
don't think
double can't
yeah,
include.
I don't think I've seen two in any list that I've
Yeah.
ever come across. One, sure. Two, that's it doesn't feel spicy, but it is kind of spicy to have that there, which is neat. The rest of it's pretty straightforward. Obviously, you kind of alluded to it. The Future Booster Energy Capsule that just makes this deck operate the way that it needs to operate. You throw those on there, you're able to move your Iron Thorns in and out of the active spot freely, and it also negates the DTE as well, which is a big piece of the puzzle there. Being able to negate that minus 20 damage and to effectively do the full 140, that allows you to still have the DTE in place and still take an Oko on a Lugia V-Star or something that might be weak to lightning. It still allows you to, make it a two, swing twice instead of three times potentially. So it doesn't just assist in the moving of the Iron Thorns, which is extremely important, but it does correct the math as well, which, makes it so important to have. And obviously being able to search that out with Arven is huge as well. And then the TM Turbo Energize, I think that's such a vital part of this too. Like you're going second, you grab that Arven, you grab that TM, you get things going. Turn two, you're ready to roll. You're ready to
Yep.
start being disruptive. You're ready to start Volt Cycloning and effectively putting a clock on your opponents too. Because other than that, there's not a ton of energy acceleration in this deck. Obviously, Iron Thorns accelerates to itself on the bench, so there is a little bit of that. But to get started, you really do need that Turbo Energize. You can do it without it. Obviously, like if you prize it, you can still be successful. But I think that's what makes this deck put a time clock on your opponent as well. And then obviously we see 7 lightning. I think that, typically when you see lightning based decks in the format or in the meta, you see a ton of energies, like Miraidon running upwards of 15, 16 energies. So 7 seems a little low, but for a deck like this, you're just recycling the energies over and over again.
Yep.
I don't think you need a ton of, obviously you don't see any really of anything removing the energies from the discard, because like you're just kind of hoping, you're just cycling, moving things around. You're never really truly going to run out of energies. Sure, it's possible. And if that's the case, then you just scoop and move on to the next game. But in most cases, you're able to be disruptive enough to where your Iron Thorns may not even be getting knocked out too. So, yeah, as much as I hate to admit it, it's a cool deck. Am I looking forward to having this in my World's collection of retro decks one day, 10 years from now? Probably not. But it's a part of Pokemon history, right? I think so. There's so much to be said about this Worlds. It's forever going to, it's something that we're going to talk about for years and years to come in the TCG. It's something that it's always going to, and I hate to say it this way because like I don't want to detract from Fernando's amazing accomplishment, but there's always going to be that tiny little asterisk there by Worlds 2024. Like there's going to always be this level of there's some it's late, I don't have the word that I'm looking for, but there's always going to be a little bit of diminished consideration or diminished thought on this year. But that said, to be able to do what Fernando did and to go 12-2, something like that, I think, yeah, something to
Yeah.
go in and just prove the world wrong, wild to me. And to write history very uniquely, to be the first person to win Worlds who didn't even technically win their top 8 match, which is crazy to think about when you
Probably
recognize
only
that.
going to be the only time that can ever be
Yeah, I
stated.
don't think we're gonna have those kind of celebrate. Hopefully, we don't have a situation
Yeah.
like this again. But no,
Eh,
just wild, and I love to see the support that he's receiving from top competitors like Jesse Parker. Like, you know,
yeah.
I'd be lying if I said I did not want Jesse to win this. Like Jesse, again, he's a friend of the podcast. Like Jesse deserved the win, but so did Fernando, right? Like Fernando deserved it just as much. He put in the time, he put in the thought. So like, I don't want that to detract from him. Very when Friday came and World started, this was not the expected outcome. I don't think anybody truly expected it. Maybe someone did, and kudos to you for being someone who's living in a simulation and living in the future. But the majority of us normal people didn't think so. But still pretty crazy, man. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, the fact of almost having like zero mulligans in his top four match versus
Dude, I didn't even
Jesse,
think
and
about. I didn't
then
even talk about
yeah,
that. Yeah.
that to me, like it's probably fair to say, oh, he high rolled, but that's the same type of Jesse with his electric generators, right? That's the
Mhm.
same type when you play a card that is either a coin flip or look at the top X and do this. You just have to have a deck run hot, and that was to me was the most amazing thing, particularly versus Jesse, is like only one mulligan in the last two
Yeah.
games where you know Jesse won game one, but he was given like six, I think,
Right.
mulligans or something ridiculous like that. Reminded me back of the old Stonejourner VMAX, days, because that was just quad Stonejourner V and
Yeah.
quad Stonejourner VMAX. So, or four of those. So, props to him. Want to say congratulations. Probably the only good thing out of the world's deck list that or the world's deck that he'll get is like this will probably be the most like rarest Lost City uh,
True.
stadium card because I'll have the little worlds
Yep.
stamp on it, and that was a card that I fully expected to have like because I love the not to get off topic, but like the Lost Zone with kind of the graffiti
Yeah.
kind of colors around it, and we never got that. I thought we would for sure have a Lost City as a gold, but I digress. Props to Fernando.
Yeah.
Props to all the top players. We even saw the modern day goat toward get top 10 once again with kind of a wacky Charizard. Only playing what was it, two? I think Charmander is what I
Mm-hmm.
saw.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I believe so. I mean, talk about just yikes. I mean, having some good pricing. Sometimes it just takes that. So,
Yeah.
props to the players. Props to the production team. TPCI maybe be a little bit more transparent in terms of disqualifications and your rule book. But I really doubt we'll see anything come of it. But
Yeah. Real quick too.
the coolest
Real
part.
quick, one more
Oh
thing too.
yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
this is something I totally forgot about when we were talking about the Roaring Moon, and I even said it was surprising to me as well. It's interesting. I don't know if you all. I'm sure. I mean, he's very well known in the community, but Celio's network, Luke Morsa, he had made this tweet that I came across
Oh,
today,
I did see
yesterday.
that this afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, not to burst any bubbles, but many testing groups had worked with Roaring Moon in the week or two leading up to Worlds due to the meta developments. Literally tested against it on Wednesday. Here's a list that I made a week ago. Probably would have cut 2 waters with more testing. So like to see this is quite interesting to me. And he even made in the comment, this is in response to the talk about the surprise of Roaring Moon in finals on stream. This just goes to show I had mentioned that Sanosuke was, probably spending a ton of time thinking about this deck. This just goes to show how deep these top competitors are into looking ahead and thinking and diving through. Like, so maybe only one did well, but obviously he knew something more than other people did or was brave enough to go through that too. So, important call I wanted to mention too, because I know that I even said that I was surprised to see that, but hearing someone like Celia, like Luke himself to be outright and saying like, yeah, a lot of top testing groups were testing this too. So,
Yeah, and if you were
there's
expecting a
more
lot
to
of
look
Rich
at.
Drago with
Oh yeah.
which we got, I
Mhm.
mean, yeah, being able just to say you're done for
Yeah.
is really easy. I know that obviously that factors in with some damage manipulation, but if they don't have a Reggie Drago V Star to attack with to do the 4 prize turn, and 230 is just not a good number for Reggie Drago to hit.
Yeah.
Unless of course you're playing the Haxorus, which I did see a couple show up on stream, so that was
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Zach Lesage
But
had
then
Hexus
we
in his
get
list. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, there you go. That's exactly what I was thinking of. And then we had, the post worlds reveals. I will preface that there was literally zero communication on Legends Z to A. So we have no idea in terms of the game and in terms of TCG mechanics. So that was a no show. But for TCG side, we did have some fun announcements, and I see you just pulled it up here.
Yeah.
We have our world locations for the next 2 years, and it's all in the state of California.
Absolutely.
We go to Anaheim next year, right around the same timeline of the event. That is August 15th through the 17th.
Yep. Here we go. I got it pulled up on the screen now too. So.
Oh yeah, perfect. Yeah, thank you. And then we have the following year in San Francisco, which I think like 3 or 4 months ago. I think that kind of got leaked out of San Francisco was hosting it. I was surprised that TPCI like didn't do a hey, you breached your contract of your non-disclosure. So I guess they still get it. And the curious one on the San Francisco is it's very late, August 28th through the 30th, and
I'm sure it had something to do with scheduling of the convention center and maybe something, notes about
yeah.
it. Yeah.
And I saw someone, discourse of, especially like in Iowa, all of our schools, start
Hmm. Hmm.
in
At this
this
time.
Friday for high
Yeah.
school. Yeah. So, hopefully being a future, Pokedad, if, one of my kids gets into it, seeing like that late, that's probably pretty hard to sell, that early into it. But Michael, what do you think? That means it's 3 years in a row for the United States.
Yeah.
Um,
There's
and
a
it's
ton of
Pokemon
discourse.
Worlds, and obviously at least Hawaii is not exactly that close to
Sure.
the United States, but it is obviously part of the 50 states.
Yeah.
But in terms of worlds going around, kind of feels odd that we're doing 3 years in a row for USA after London, Japan, and then Hawaii, and then Anaheim and San Francisco. Kind of feels a little weird.
Yeah. I mean, anyone who has Twitter could read the discourse here. Um, I mean, personally, I love California, especially San Diego. I would have loved to have seen it in San Diego again. I can't remember who posted it too, but it was kind of funny to look back at the history of PTCG or Pokemon World Championship and seeing Anaheim and San Francisco being back to back as well in the past. I can't remember when. I'd have to go back and look up on like Bulbapedia or something like that. But this isn't the first time it's happened, so that's not a huge surprise. It also I saw some interesting discourse too out there in terms of it being like a, maybe it's like if we look at it from a personal perspective, we go out and blow back to back years on these massive elaborate vacations somewhere. We're 3 years in a row, and then we're like, all right, cool. Maybe we got to take it easy the next couple of years, and so maybe that's what Pokemon's doing here too. They've invested a ton of money into these experiences, things like that, and so maybe they're trying to save a little bit. Who knows? Maybe the production value is going to be better than it's ever been too because they're cutting some costs there. Maybe I don't know. There are so many factors that can go into these decisions here too. So obviously there's a lot of people excited. Obviously the West Coast friends. I know Dre, one of our favorites. He's
Yeah.
stoked about it too. He'd even mentioned that he's willing to give everyone a Pokemon tattoo or a tattoo there. So if you are looking for a new tattoo next year in Anaheim, hit up Dre. He'll do it for you.
Yeah.
Probably not for free, but he'll make it worth your while. Um, yeah, no, I'm excited personally. I know there's people who are, in the camp of they want to go to Worlds if they're going to work all year for it to qualify. They want it to be a cool vacation, which I also see that as well. And so I can understand the frustration of it being just another U.S. city. But then like Cash Vendor Singh Man from Singapore, he's
Yeah.
he's an individual I see all the time on the online circuit. Really good. I think he's one of the people that works on Pokestats.
Hmm.
And for him, he's excited. Like they're super excited that it's gonna be accessible for people in Asia to get there versus it being somewhere more on like the East Coast or different things too. So there's always gonna be, and that's one thing you learn after being in any community. We see it quite a bit here in the PTCG community as well. There's gonna be polarity. There's gonna be loud voices on both sides. There's gonna be people who never agree. That's just the nature of what we are experiencing together as a Pokemon community. I think overall though it's an exciting opportunity. We'll see what happens. I mean, I would love to qualify. We'll see if that happens. Maybe not this year, maybe the year after. But for me, being that it's in California, I already told my wife, I was like, we're going the next 2 years to California. Like, it's not a hard trip for us to make from the East Coast. We already love the area. So, like, I don't always work, but we have an office. My company has an office in San Francisco. So I joked in my local
Oh,
Discord that I'm going to try to make it a business trip to pay for my travel out there. But,
there you
uh,
go.
but no, I
Well,
mean, go ahead.
I was gonna say the fact of maybe not the big destinations that we've seen. Granted, in 2016 17, they went there, but I think
Yeah,
Owen Cameraman, who was on the podcast, actually said, well, be it the destinations maybe don't speak like, oh, these are sick locations to go to. He
right.
said this was massive step forward, because what was the issue with this year for Worlds, right? No one knew like when it actually was going to go through.
Absolutely.
So people were trying to guess at, getting an Airbnb or a hotel
Yeah.
and flights and everything. And so the
Yeah.
fact that they at least made one step forward of, one big step forward, I should say, of having the dates actually for the next 2 years is a
Yeah.
massive step. Just kind of, I don't know, feels a little bit lackluster. I mean, for us personally, obviously, that it's in the United States, a lot easier for us to travel if we were to even get a spectator's pass. But again, the top X system, not as many players, so maybe there is a little bit more spectators as well too. So,
Yeah. That's one thing I
um,
saw. I saw some talking about that too. Is maybe
yeah, and
Pokemon
then
wants to sell more spectator, which cool. Like that's I think that could be good for the game. That could be good for all of the games involved. If we want to continue to see Pokemon thrive for years to come, Big Pikachu needs to get money somehow, right? They got to invest
yeah,
in
they only
in
make a
what
few
they're
billion
developing.
dollars every year.
Yeah,
So
I
what's
know,
another
right?
couple $1 billion as
I
well
know.
too? I don't think they're hurting
Uh,
for money. I mean, obviously
no,
they're
no,
business for profit, so they want to see
sure,
profit. Obviously each quarter, I get that.
yeah,
Obviously, and just like our business as well too,
yeah.
right? We're not in the
Well,
nonprofit sector, but
yeah, and one cool thing too, and this is probably the last I'll say on this topic, but it just came up today, and I actually got to get back to them on Discord. But there's a local dad in our area who I've gotten to know through locals. He doesn't play the game. I think he's played Magic in the past, but his son is a junior. He's a couple years older than my son Graham. He's maybe 9 or 10. Super cool kid. Really loves the game, and I think for them, and especially I always joke with Graham, my son, about it. It's like you have no idea how lucky you are that your dad loves Pokemon and takes you to all these events, because not every kid's parents know Pokemon, understand the competitive scene and the circuit and understanding that. So Mark, this guy, he messaged on our Discord today asking about like, hey, like my son watched the ceremonies. He saw that Worlds was going to be here in the U.S. and it's going to be accessible for us to make,
yeah,
because like for someone who's a parent who doesn't truly understand Pokemon to the fullest extent, like if I'm seeing something like Hawaii or Japan, like there's no way I'm going to think about taking my kid out there. And even if they qualify, like they're still like that's an expense for a lot of people, right? But for them, like even if they don't qualify, one thing I'm encouraging him is like even if you don't qualify, maybe try to fit it into your budget to go as a spectator, and have him as a junior experience Worlds and like let that light a fire under them to kind of like get excited for the next season. And so like it being here, and again, this is looking at it from a very narrow lens of like someone living here in the United States. So I understand that there are listeners throughout the world who this may not apply to. But for us here in the North Carolina or in the U.S. in general, it does open up an exciting opportunity to make the game more accessible for people who otherwise may not know about the game as well, or the games I should say,
yeah,
because obviously there's more than just the TCG at these events.
right, yeah, and getting to go to a regional first is probably like the easiest and most accessible way to kind
Yeah,
of it's
which they
experience
have.
that. So World
Yeah,
is going through. So yeah, but yeah, in terms of getting to see the spectacle that is World, like yeah, that's
right.
on my bucket list too, to attend one day. Hopefully
Absolutely.
playing in it, but just to
Yep.
attend one as well too.
Fingers
And in
crossed.
essence of time, they did say Pokemon Pocket TCG gets
Yep. Yep.
released. You can actually like
October
sign up in your
30th.
October 30. You can actually sign up for like getting registered for it.
Yep.
I know I saw like Chip Ritchie kind of had it and they kind of showcased it throughout the broadcast and then obviously on social going through. Just it's going to be its own essence. The
Yeah.
fact of what they were showcasing already looked a lot better in some areas than TCG Live
Mm-hmm.
is I don't know what to say for that client, but I don't want to spend any more time on TCG Live.
You're such
Everyone
a
should
hater. You're
hopefully
such a hater.
understand. Yeah, I love to play the game, but I don't get excited when I have to launch the app. So, and then the coolest probably was the
Yeah.
announce at the very end was the owner, like the trainer's Pokemon returns. So we saw
Right.
this
Yeah.
obviously
So
way
cool.
back. Yeah, way back for like Misty's Gyarados, Brock's
Some of the
Geodude,
level X
uh,
days. It's right here, but it's not
I
really
was
loading.
laughing that everyone was saying like trade is back, and it should be trade on Zoroark is back because we literally have a live card in Brilliant Stars
Yep.
that has the ability called trade. So it
But
was
it's
kind
not
of
the
funny going
same.
through. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, with the Zoroark GX obviously being home to so many predominant players, obviously, in Stefan Ivanov and Tord Reklev.
Toward
Chip
record.
Ritchie had an awesome like little video of like 5 seconds of like the cheering toward screaming and saying, "Hey, it's back." So that's really cool. They showcased some card reveals. We have up on our video screen here, the PokeBeach article as well too. But pretty cool. Clefairy saying, "Hey, your Dragon Pokemon now have
Got a
weakness."
weakness.
Is
Yep.
is something that I've gone through. I know Drew had sounded this off quite maybe over a year, even 2 years ago. He would love to see the weakness and the resistance get like replayed. So weakness instead of like times two, maybe just plus 30, and then resistance, minus 20 or 30,
Yep. Needs to be back.
just to change it. But yeah, but pretty cool to have it announced. We didn't see any big like V Star like once per game, so we don't quite yet know. Besides like the A specs, I guess that's a one of in your deck. Obviously, all the Radiant Pokemon, rotate at the beginning of next year, or I guess whenever rotation is going to happen. We don't know the dates on that.
I do.
Cool, right?
I really love. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for the new mechanic too. Like even here with in Zoroark, choose one of your benched ends Pokemon attacks and use it as this attack too. So a lot of people were saying like, not only do we get to get trade Zoroark back, we also get to get Mew VMAX reincarnate as well, picking an attack of a Pokemon and using it too. So like, I mean, one, I love Zoroark. I love N. I have some friends locally who are like the biggest fan of N, things like that too. But shout out to you, Andrew. So I think there's a ton of people who are thrilled about this. I'm excited. I love the look of the card. I love that you get to see the trainer there. It's very resemblant to like the Lux Chomp days. This is the, on my very first podcast here, I chatted about this. This is one of my favorite decks from 2010. And so you've got Cynthia's Garchomp. So I love it's just cool that they're bringing it back, right? Like it's an exciting time for Pokemon. I think a lot of people were hyped up, and this doesn't even we didn't even scratch the surface of the secondary announcement too, that the Team Rocket set.
Going to mention that they kind of just dropped a little nugget for like 6 seconds right at the end as well too, flashing like the Team Rocket symbol and then a little silhouette of Mewtwo kind of popping in there too, which
definitely definitely was hyped. Like it was late. I think it was like 1:00 our time on the East Coast, something like that. It was pretty late, but I was so stoked just watching this video. And I think if you haven't seen it, which many of our listeners probably, I would assume at this point, have listened or have watched it, but if you haven't,
do it. It's a must watch. Yeah, it's a must watch.
Pause this right now and go watch it.
Yeah, it wasn't anything. I don't want to say like new mechanic because they've done it before. It's not like anything new. It's just in terms of like. Not to be a Debbie Downer. I mean, I'm excited as well too. Just because hopefully there's Lance's Dragonite or something like that as well too. Because obviously you people that play the video games grow accustomed to like what was your favorite gym leader or just trainer in general. So the card arts could be really cool. They showcased like the art rare of N's Reshiram as well too, and that was pretty cool. But the video reveal was obviously pretty awesome. Is what I'll say in terms of graphics and everything. Is like, man, if they could just spend like an ounce of that budget towards TCG Live, we might have a little bit better of a client.
Wishful thinking, man. You gotta move on.
We didn't get any huge reveal of like the V Stars or obviously the EX coming back. So it's just more similar EX Pokemon, if you will, or trainer. So like N's Reshiram is just a basic Pokemon. It's nothing crazy. So we'll see kind of what's more to come. The Team Rocket one does scare me in terms of like disruption control. Going through. Hopefully by the time that comes out, Snorlax Stall is moved past. Obviously Pidgeot EX, or we even have that Luxray that's in EX. That's a stage 2. That's like discard any card from your opponent's hand, whereas the V just is a trainer card. So really cool reveals. and I know there was some reveals that we'll probably get into next week because
Yep.
we're going really long on time, and I hope everyone gets to the end of this. So whoever's listening, prompts for you in
Thank
the
you.
YouTube video.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you comment what would be like your number one trainer card, like I said, Lance's Dragonite EX or something like that. Put that in the comment, and then I will try to hit you up for some TCG live codes because Lord knows, I have plenty of those for our Patreon members. So, any final thoughts before we plug where they can find more of the PCS podcast and ourselves?
Yeah, no, I think I think we've said quite a bit. Worlds was great. I think going into Worlds, I was a little down on the format. I was a little down on just Pokemon. Wasn't too thrilled. Again, I've mentioned I'm not the biggest Drago fan, but Worlds just coming into the event, getting to see Pokemon play at the highest level has really just like pumped me up to get ready. I've got the Double Cup weekend. Like I'm just thrilled. I'm gonna figure this out. I'm gonna have like these cool decks in play. I'm excited to play some Worlds decks or some decks based off of the decks that were played at Worlds too. So no, I'm
Yeah,
excited, and I hope that everyone left. Like again, I know that there is a level of taintedness to the world's Pokemon World Championship 2024 for the TCG, but I hope that we can still all agree that the TCG is in a really cool spot, and it's only going to continue to get better and better. And I think obviously, as anything in life, we're always wanting to go back to the good old days, but I think that we have a lot to look forward to. So I'm excited. I'm thrilled for the game ahead, and at the very least, if I hate a format, I have retro. So
yeah,
I won't
and
be playing
nothing can
the
spark
World's 2024 decks with retro for a very long time,
Ye
but
yeah, I
we at
don't
least have
that in, like,
it.
2022, it was pretty rough,
Yeah, yeah,
as well too, so, yeah, I think, it kinda helped too because I was kind of in a lull as well too, and I think just not having anything from NAIC to now to see, the top players playing, because watching someone play on TCG Live is not fun,
right.
so anytime Mahone puts out a tabletop video of either GLC or Standard or Future, actually, is probably what he focuses more on. I get super excited to see what he's going to produce, obviously, and put on for tabletop because that is the
Yep.
content that I like to watch him on my free time. So with that, thank you everyone for listening, watching, subscribing to our YouTube channel as well too. We have that. So for Twitter, for either myself or just the PCS podcast, it's at PCS podcast on X, I guess I should say. I have been on Twitter since 2009, so I think I'm just always going to call it that.
That's fair.
Um, yeah, Twitch is really easy. It's a PCS podcast, all one word, and we'll continue to try to get some content out on that way for our standard season challenges, which I'll lead into. We're starting so all of our season challenges are exclusive for our Patreon members. It helps with better pricing, and we try to have a different type of like gimmick format. So this we have kind of talked about it, but basically you get to choose three random decks and send them to your opponent, and they get to ban one of them, and then you
Yep.
decide what to play for the other one in a best of three. So and again, this one standard we have been Stellar Crown and ETB and some other goodies is up for the winner. So that's really cool. And talk about Stellar Crown being literally right around the corner
Yep.
as well too. So our patreon.com/PCS podcast is where you can find that. It is, like I said, it's there, and basically anything that gets put into that goes right back into the community in terms of prizing. I'm hoping to get a mic here too to just kind of get more professional here as Michael and I put out content that people want, and that's what I would say about that. And then anywhere that you can listen to
Yep.
podcasts, search PCS space podcast, and then you'll find us.
That's
And
right.
then Michael, I think you were able to get YouTube launched as well too, right?
Not quite. But
Okay.
obviously, when you're watching the video, it is on YouTube. So follow us on the handle that you see. Next week, I'll drop the actual handle because I don't have it yet. That's next steps. But we'll get there. We'll get there.
You had a
But
you had a busy day just trying to get us video,
yeah, that's right.
our
We
video
made it.
going. So
We made it.
yeah, we
Yeah.
did make it actually. So
Yeah, and you can also find me on Twitter as well. I tweet a lot. You can find me at mradiaptcg. pretty simple. Shout out to all the people who helped me get to over 500 followers a couple days ago too. So that was pretty cool to see.
Nice.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. So, Aaron, thanks for a good conversation. I'm excited. Thanks for everyone who listened to the podcast, whether it would be on the traditional audio, which also, I don't know if you knew this, Aaron, but on Spotify, you can actually see video too. So we'll have video on Spotify as well. If I figure that out.
Oh,
Yep. So pretty
cool.
neat.
Did
Yeah.
not know that. So
Yep.
that's one extra little plug. All right, I
That's
like
right.
that.
Yeah. So make sure to go on to and give us some good reviews on Spotify, on Apple. Make sure when you see this on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, like and subscribe, all the cool YouTube things you get to say. And we're excited for the next week. We'll be back again in just a few days.
Absolutely. Thanks again,
Cool.
everyone, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right. Peace.